Hi, Bookmatic community. Today we're going to talk about a great topic, which I know you all love learning about. It's reading, how to become a better reader. And we're going to talk about the 4 levels of reading, which are mentioned in this book right here, How to Read a Book by Mortimer Alder. This book is a classic. It was published in like 1940. And really, if you have not read it, it's a perfect book to read to really get to know how to become a better reader overall. So this video will have 4 sections, which talks about the 4 levels of reading. The first section is elementary. The second is inspectional. The third is analytical. And the fourth is syntopical. So I will go through each of these sections and kind of give some examples and explanations as to what these 4 levels of reading are. So if you want to skip around on the video, like you want to skip over the elementary section, or you want to go straight to the syntopical section to find out what that is, I will create a table of contents basically, or video chapters at the bottom, so you can skip around to that and save this video for later watching if it's a bit too long for you or something like that to watch in one setting. So that's why I've created those, to make it easier for you to go through this video and get the most out of it. Very first level is the elementary reading level, and that's pretty much all of us, probably all of you that are watching, basically anyone in the world who's literate reads at this level, can read at this level. And basically that's what we learn at school, how to pronounce the words, how to read the letters, how to know what the letters mean, know what the words mean and everything. So this is really the basic level that everyone learns in school. And it's actually the level that a lot of people are still reading at now, especially for people that don't really read on a regular basis. They're basically just reading at an elementary level. That's why, like, when writing a book or writing a blog post or something like that, writing at like a 6th grade level is a really good strategy to use, because you don't know who your readers are going to be. And by keeping it simple, you for sure know that that person is going to understand what you have written. So that's the elementary level, very basic, very straightforward. Okay, so the second reading level is the inspectional level, and this is actually broken up into 4 separate sections. So I'll link that down there in the video chapters. So let's start out with the first section, which is skimming or pre-reading. And this is when you want to take a look at the book or the article that you're going to be reading through, and you look at like the title, the subtitle, you look at the table of contents, you read through those subheadings and all the headings and the chapter titles and whatever else. And this will give you an idea about what the book or the article is about. And it will give you the idea of whether you actually want to take the time to read through that book or article based solely on the table of contents, the chapter titles, and everything like that. Because yeah, you might pick up a book and you look through those subtitles and chapter titles and stuff, and you're like, I don't know if this is one that I want to invest my time on, because we have such a limited amount of time to read the amount of books that we want to read. Another thing that I do with this skimming is I will usually read like maybe the introduction, or at least part of the introduction, and I might read like the first few paragraphs of each chapter, depending on how far along I go in the book, to make my decision whether it's a good investment in my money and my time. This is a really good way to pick books that are not going to waste your time by seeking out by discovering, by looking at each of the chapters and then deciding, hey, is this a book that I want to invest my time in? And also the one last thing for this part is looking at the bibliography is also another good way to determine whether the book is worth investing your time and your money. Because by looking at the bibliography, you can tell what are the other books that the author read in order to research for this book. Most bibliographies are not like the full research, but yeah, they have the majority, the main ones that the author used in order to create their book. Credible research for the book. Next here is superficial reading, which basically is reading through the whole book once. Now, the author of How to Read a Book suggests reading through the book without actually stopping. Personally, I do not do this, but that's what he suggests. So reading through it without stopping, and then going back and reading deeper. And this is when you like start to take your notes and start to ask questions. And so for me personally, I guess partly because of time constraints and stuff like that, I will personally take the necessary notes that I want to take while reading the first time through. And then after I have finished the book and determined its worth, whether I want to revisit or not, that after I finish it is when I decide, will I ever come back to this book? Yes, no, like this is of course a book that I will come back to, that I have come back to prepare for this video, right? And there's several other books that I definitely would go back to, and there's a lot of books that I would not go back to. So that's why I'm saying, for me personally, I would rather take the time to read a bit deeper into the book the first time through, rather than reading through the whole book and then reading through it again on a deeper level. And the third part to inspectional reading is basically reading speed. Okay, so the important key factor to know, and I actually wrote this down because it's a very good quote from the book. I paraphrased it, put it into my own words here, which is the ideal is to be able to read at different speeds and know when to do so. So I find that whenever I'm reading through a book, there are some books that I could just read cover to cover without really having to take the time to think too much about the content of the book. And those are probably the books that I probably wouldn't reread. But then there are other books when I actually have to like slow down a bit. I have to process what's being written. And those are the books that I would more likely be able to return to. It would be worthy to return to at a later date. So knowing when to speed read and knowing when to slow down is definitely an inspectional reading skill that with practice you can, and with like following your gut or your intuition, you can know when to speed up and when to slow down. So it's a really good tip to follow. And the fourth one here for inspectional reading is to be a demanding reader. This means that you are going to be reading and writing between the lines. I love this idea from How to Read a Book. Reading and writing between the lines, literally writing between the lines, not necessarily between, because there's not a lot of space there, but at the top of the book, on the side of the book, maybe writing in your notebook and asking questions. The purpose of the book is to help you to solve a problem or help you to learn about a particular topic in depth. And if the book doesn't answer your questions, then it is your responsibility as a demanding reader to seek out the answers to those questions. And, reading is an active activity. So of course, when we have our pen in our hand and we're going through the book, we are being active about it. We're very purposeful with what we read and very purposeful with what we write in the margins and what we try to study in depth about. So yes, being a demanding reader is an essential aspect of reading. Okay, so now we're on to analytical reading, which is the fourth level of reading. And there are actually 15 steps, so to say, or rules to follow through this. Now, I'm not going to go into detail in every single one. Otherwise, we might be here for hours. But I do recommend, if any of what I say during this section interests you and you want to dig deeper, then buy this book. So yeah, the very first one is classify the book according to the subject matter. So actually, this is something that you would probably know during your inspectional reading, because you're actually going through the table of contents. Maybe you're reading the introduction, and oftentimes the author will state the purpose of the book in the introduction, right? So this one is more so in the inspectional reading level, but I kind of get why Mortimer added this. Is because like sometimes when you're reading through the book, you get into more depth, and then you discover, okay, it's actually deeper than what the author mentions in the introduction. So we get into more detail. So categorize the book. What is the book for? What is it about? Right? And then the second one is to be able to basically summarize or paraphrase or whatever the book into one sentence. Now, of course, you could expand it to maybe 2 or 3 sentences, but if you can summarize a book in one sentence, then you probably understand it pretty well. I think that would be amazing to be able to summarize it in one sentence. Which kind of reminds me of some of the posts that I've been doing on various social media platforms, where at the end of the month, after I have finished reading a book, I'll create a post where I do 1-sentence book reviews. So basically, yeah, taking this idea and stating what the book is about in 1 sentence. And the third one here is being able to outline the book in your own words. Now, of course, we've got the table of contents, which is kind of like an outline, but I think, basically maybe summarizing the chapter would be a good outline. So you're like, you know exactly where things go in the book. And by creating an outline of your own of the book that you just read and you feel is worthy of outlining, then I think this can help you to better understand and analyze what the text is about. The fourth one here is to be able to define the problems the author is actually trying to solve. And then after reading the book, you can determine whether the author has actually solved those problems or not, and what problems are actually still left, if any. Or maybe you personally can think of some additional problems that the author didn't even think about or mention in their book. So I think this one is a really good one. And then finding the author's key words, interpreting the most important sentences. I'm just reading down the list here a little bit further. Know the author's arguments and be able to define those arguments. So often it might be a good idea to keep like a notebook of these types of things. And then determine the problems the author has or haven't solved. I mentioned that one. And then 9 through 15 is criticize the book with good etiquette. And in this book, it describes those 9 to 15 steps in pretty good detail. I'm not going to go through every single one in this video here. So yeah, I think I just want to emphasize a little bit on the criticism of a book. I personally like to criticize books, not necessarily in a bad way, but I like to analyze what the author has written. And I like to state the things that I agree or disagree with. And often I do this right in the margins of the books. I'm kind of like having a conversation with the author. So this is a good step to take. And don't feel bad because, when you write in the book, when you have a conversation with the author and you disagree with the author, that author won't know that you're disagreeing with them unless you're posting it about it on social media and then the author happens to read it or something like that, right? So don't feel shameful for criticizing a book, but if you do it with good etiquette, like Mortimer explains, then yeah, it's not too much of a problem. All right, and we've come down to the fourth one, the last one, which is the syntopical reading. So we've got 5 steps in syntopical reading, but first of all, what is syntopical reading? Syntopical reading is reading numerous books on the same subject, or what I like to do, this is my own addition, cross subjects. The author here talks about the same subject. Cross subjects it's very specialized here, right? If we're able to analyze and make connections between subjects that are unrelated, this means that we're coming closer to becoming a polymath, right? So anyway, let me finish the definition. So reading numerous books on the same subject and comparing and contrasting the ideas that they contain. So we're comparing it, we're analyzing it, we're digging deeper, not into just one book, but across a bunch of books. You've probably come to a point when you're reading a book and you came across an idea and you were like, oh, I saw this in the book that I was just reading last week. Wow. Or you come across a quote and it's like, oh, that's contradictory to the idea that I read in a similar book last month. Right? So we're digging deeper into these ideas, we're comparing them, we're contrasting them, and we're learning from those comparisons and contrasting ideas. So when you're comparing and contrasting ideas from books on the same subject or different subjects, you want to find the relevant passage. So when you're reading through a book, just realize that the book is not written for the author. The book is written for you. You have command over what you read. You have command over how you interpret the book. So when you're reading through that book, maybe the book is not the best book in the world, but there are going to be passages in the book that get you thinking and get you questioning. So what you could do is definitely underline that or highlight it, and maybe keep it in a separate document or something like that. The quotes that really stand out. What are the passages that really relate to what you personally are trying to get better at, trying to study? Okay, so you want to be able to pull those aside and use those and incorporate those, being a demanding reader, into your own life. In relation to that, bringing the author's message to your own terms. So you've got your own life, you've got your own interpretations, your own beliefs. The author has their own beliefs. Being able to try and understand that and interpret that in your own way is what this means. Is bringing it to your own terms, incorporating what you want in your life and ditching the rest. And by reading multiple authors from several different books about the same topic, you'll be able to get a vast variety of different ways of thinking about the same topic, which is really cool and unique. And questions, which is the third one, is a common theme throughout this whole video, right? Asking questions and digging deeper. So you want to clarify your own questions about the books that you've been reading. And then if the books are not answering those questions, you need to dig deeper and find resources that do answer those questions. Seek answers through experience and through reading and digging deeper into the vast amount of books out there. Number 4 is defining the issues of the books, right? Or the articles, defining those issues in your own terms. And then number 5 is analyzing the discussion. And usually your analysis of the books that you've been reading becomes better when you find contradictions, when you find opposing ideas. Now, this may not necessarily always happen, or maybe you find something that is slightly different, right? A different interpretation of the same topic. So yeah, I mean, I think these 4 ideas, 4 levels of reading are actually very good. And if you combine these 4 levels of reading with Zettelkasten Method, which I will link video up here, whichever side of the screen it shows up on. I'll link a video up there about how I've used RemNote and the Zettelkasten method to be able to combine my ideas together, to become better at reading, to become better at remembering what I read. So yeah, I'll link that up there so you can check that out. And if you haven't got a chance to read this book yet, it's a classic, written in the 1940s. Definitely pick up a copy. It will help you to become a better reader. And I hope that my summarization of these 4 levels of reading have piqued your interest and that you've learned something from them and that you could maybe apply in your life. So definitely subscribe to the channel and see you in the next video.